I used to believe that if I just worked hard enough, stayed quiet enough, and gave enough of myself, they'd love me the way they loved her. It took me years to realize they never would. Growing up, I was the oldest daughter in a picture, perfect suburban family. You know the kind, white picket fence, matching pajamas every Christmas, smiling portraits above the fireplace. To anyone looking in, we were the kind of family people envied. But I knew better, because while I was posing for those pictures, I was holding my breath, always bracing for the moment the camera clicked, the smiles dropped, and reality came rushing back in. Her name was Amelia, my younger sister. 2 years younger, to be exact. 2 years and a lifetime of difference. She was the golden child, bright, bubbly, beautiful. The kind of girl who lit up a room the second she walked in. Teachers adored her, neighbors doted on her, and my parents. Well, my parents worshipped her. They said they loved us both equally. That's what they always told people. "We treat them the same," Mom would say with a laugh at dinner parties, ruffling my hair as she turned to beam at Amelia. "We just can't believe how lucky we are to have 2 such wonderful girls." But anyone paying attention could see the truth. It started with little things. Amelia always got the bigger slice of cake, the new clothes, the first pick of everything, from what show we watched on TV to what we had for dinner. If I complained, Mom would scold me gently. "Let her go first, sweetie. You're the older one. You should know better." Amelia never had to share, never had to wait, never had to be responsible for anything she didn't want to do. When we got a puppy, guess who got her name on the collar? Amelia, even though I was the one who fed it, walked it, and picked up after it for the next 10 years. When we had chores, guess who did hers and Amelia's? Me. When Amelia broke my phone because she was mad I wouldn't let her borrow it, my parents bought her a new one, so she wouldn't feel bad, and I got grounded for making her cry. I'm not making this up. At first I told myself it was a phase, that they just saw her as younger, more delicate, more in need of protection. But the truth was far more brutal. They simply liked her more. By the time I was in middle school, I had developed a skill set most adults would envy. I could cook a full dinner for 4, write my own excuse notes for school, and keep a detailed calendar of Amelia's ballet recitals so no one would forget to show up. Not that they noticed. My report cards were always straight A's. I remember once bringing one home, all proud and flushed, and laying it carefully on the table. Dad glanced at it for half a second, grunted, "Nice," and went back to watching football. 10 minutes later, Amelia walked in crying because her teacher gave her a B on her spelling test. My parents spent the rest of the evening comforting her, rubbing her back, and calling the school to discuss concerns. I sat at the kitchen table by myself and did my math homework. I didn't cry, I just swallowed it, like I always did. That became a pattern. In high school, the divide widened like a canyon. I was in every honors course they offered. I led the debate team, ran cross-country, volunteered at the animal shelter, and still managed to hold a part-time job at the public library. I was building a future, a real one. Amelia was failing algebra, skipping gym, getting detention for vaping behind the school. My parents called her creative. They said she just hadn't found her passion yet. When she crashed Dad's car sophomore year, she was overwhelmed. When I asked for driving lessons, "We don't have time right now." I passed my learner's permit test on the first try. I didn't get to drive until 6 months later after Amelia took the wheel of her brand new used convertible. A graduation present, early. But nothing hurt more than the night I got into college. It was the moment I'd worked toward for years. I had applied to 10 schools, 5 safety, 3 target, 2 dreams. One of those dreams was a well-known private university on the East Coast. Competitive, expensive, prestigious. I never thought I'd get in. And then I did. The envelope arrived thick and heavy, with gold embossing on the front. I opened it standing by the mailbox, hands shaking. I was in. Not only that, they were offering me a partial merit scholarship. I ran into the house, beaming, practically vibrating. Mom was in the kitchen. Dad was watching TV. Amelia was scrolling on her phone. "I got in," I said, breathless. "I got into Marlton. And they gave me a scholarship. Look." I held out the letter. Dad looked up. "That's the expensive one, right?" "Yeah, but we can't afford that." My stomach dropped. "But I can cover the rest with loans. And I have savings. And maybe if I work over the summer." Mom interrupted. "Why don't you go to community college for 2 years and transfer? That's smarter." "But we've already promised Amelia she can go straight to Corley College next year," she said. "We can't do both." That was the moment. Not the dismissals, not the forgotten birthdays, not even the 1,000 tiny cuts of childhood neglect. That was the moment I finally understood. I was not their daughter. I was their fallback plan, their built-in babysitter, their unpaid assistant. They didn't see me, not really. I told them I'd think about it. Then I went upstairs, closed the door, and cried into my pillow until my throat went raw. The next morning, I started working on a financial plan. I accepted the scholarship. I called the admissions office to ask about work-study options. I spoke to my high school guidance counselor about local grants. I updated my resume and applied to every summer job I could find. When my parents told me again at dinner, "We really hope you'll make the smart choice and stay close to home," I just nodded. I didn't argue. I just got to work. Amelia, meanwhile, was treated like a celebrity. She talked about Corley like it was heaven on earth. Fancy dorms, parties, travel abroad. She didn't even look at the cost. My parents never asked her to. They took her on a campus tour over spring break, bought her a hoodie, a blanket, a matching backpack, and phone case with the school logo. She posted every photo on Instagram with captions like, "Can't wait to live my best life." No one took me on a tour. I took the bus alone the day before orientation. Graduation came and went. I was valedictorian, gave a speech, got a standing ovation. My parents clapped politely. Amelia scrolled through her phone the entire time. That night there was a party for Amelia. A pre-college send-off, balloons, streamers, a cake with her school's name written in blue frosting. Neighbors came, relatives came. There was no party for me. I stayed in the kitchen and washed dishes while Amelia opened gifts in the living room. Someone asked my mom where I was going for school. She said, "Somewhere out east, I think." But she's on her own for that. Like I was a stranger. I left 3 days later. No one helped me pack. No one came with me. No one waved at the airport. I dragged 2 suitcases down the concourse, found my gate, and waited alone. As I sat there, watching the planes take off, I made myself a promise. I wasn't going to beg anymore, not for love, not for praise, not for their attention. I was going to earn everything they said I couldn't. I was going to work harder than I ever had. And one day, they were going to see me on a stage again. But next time, it wouldn't be a polite clap. It would be silence and regret. I wish I could say that leaving home made things easier. That stepping onto campus marked the beginning of some heroic, redemptive journey filled with supportive friends, mentors, and personal breakthroughs. It didn't. What I stepped into wasn't a coming-of-age story. It was survival. When I arrived at Marlton University, the campus was buzzing with the kind of youthful optimism you see in brochures. Freshmen moved in with boxes of neatly folded clothes, string lights, mini fridges. Parents hovered, teary-eyed, snapping photos of their kids by the dormitory sign. I rolled my 2 second-hand suitcases across the cobblestones alone. No one cried. No one waved. No one even knew I was gone. My roommate was already there. Her name was Tessa. She had a ring light, a boyfriend at NYU, and a set of monogrammed towels. Her dad, a plastic surgeon from New Jersey, had driven 6 hours to move her in. He nodded at me briefly and left without small talk. She didn't look at me once the entire first day. The room smelled like vanilla lotion and lavender laundry sheets. I smelled like bus station. That night, while she FaceTimed her boyfriend from bed with her AirPods in, I sat on the floor next to my suitcase, trying to find a clean pair of socks. I didn't cry. I was past that. I had exactly $187 in my bank account. That included the $20 bill I had shoved in the back of my phone case for emergencies. I'd worked 2 jobs over the summer, library assistant during the day, waitress at a diner on weekends. After buying books, bedding, and the cheapest laptop I could find on eBay, I was left with just enough to get through maybe 2 weeks if I didn't eat more than once a day. I immediately signed up for work-study. My first job was cleaning the language lab before classes started each morning. I had to be there by 6 a.m. The building was dark, the halls echoey, and the smell of whiteboard markers mixed with lemon cleaner made my head pound. For $8.25 an hour, I wiped keyboards, refilled printer paper, and emptied trash bins. No one thanked me. Classes were brutal. Marlton was full of people who'd gone to prep schools with personal tutors, travel abroad experience, and parents who donated wings of museums. I came from a public high school where we had to share textbooks and glue our own geometry kits together. I didn't even understand half the academic terms professors used. Deconstructive critique, dialectical framework, socio-historical lens. What lens? I didn't even have proper glasses, just an old prescription I hadn't updated in 3 years because we lost vision coverage. The first time I was called on in seminar, I froze. Would you like to elaborate on that? Professor Klein asked, peering at me over her glasses. I had no idea what she meant. I mumbled something about the reading being really deep and prayed someone else would speak up. They did. With words I had to Google after class. That night I didn't sleep. I lay in bed replaying it in my mind over and over like a loop I couldn't turn off. Tessa snored softly in her bed, a silk eye mask covering her perfect eyelids. I started pulling triple duty, full-time classes, early morning lab shifts, and evening tutoring. I volunteered to tutor second-year students in English Lit, not because I felt qualified, but because it paid $10 an hour and came with access to the staff kitchen, where I could stash instant noodles and steal leftover coffee. I ate once a day. Sometimes twice, if I swiped an apple from the dining hall garbage bin left behind by someone who didn't finish their meal. I learned which vending machines on campus had sensors you could shake, which professors would leave half-empty coffee cups behind, which dorms didn't always lock the communal fridge. My body changed quickly. I lost weight, then muscle, then energy. My jeans sagged. My shoes developed holes in the soles. I started to feel faint when I stood up too fast. No one noticed. Or if they did, they said nothing. Once, I fainted in the stairwell. It was a Friday. I had just finished a shift in the lab, rushed to class, then worked a 3-hour tutoring block. I hadn't eaten in 27 hours. I remember standing at the top of the dormitory stairs. Then black. I woke up in a hallway, staring at the fluorescent lights. A student RI was leaning over me. "Did you eat anything today?" she asked gently. I nodded. Lied. Just tired. She helped me to my room and left. I lay on my bed, staring at the ceiling for hours. I didn't go to the health center because I couldn't afford the copay. Phone calls home became less frequent. I stopped calling first. They never called back. When I did speak to my mom, she talked about Amelia, how she was adjusting beautifully, how she got invited to join a campus sorority, how she was going to Paris for winter break with friends from her international economics class. She really found her place, Mom said, pride thick in her voice. I asked if Amelia was still struggling with math. Oh no, she switched majors. She's doing great in communications. I asked how they were managing tuition and expenses. We figured it out. Your father took some money from the retirement account. I opened my mouth to say something, then closed it. Not once had they offered to help me. Not even when I fainted. Not even when I emailed asking for help with books and got no reply. They didn't forget. They chose not to see me. There were small mercies. A girl named Hannah in my literature class noticed my cracked backpack strap and offered to help stitch it. She had a quiet kindness to her, like someone who knew how to listen without making you talk. I never told her everything. Just enough to make her ask if I wanted to study together. We did, every Tuesday and Thursday. For the first time, I felt like I wasn't invisible. One of my professors, Dr. Maris, left a note on a graded essay that read, "Your analysis is sharper than most seniors. Have you considered applying for the research assistant position next term?" It paid $12 an hour and included free printing privileges. I applied the same night. Got the job 2 weeks later. That winter was brutal. My boots leaked. I walked to class in wet socks. My gloves had holes. My coat was a thrift store find and the zipper stuck. I wrapped a scarf around the bottom and prayed it wouldn't snow too hard. One night, as I walked back from tutoring through a sleet storm, I slipped and landed hard on my side. I thought I cracked a rib. I lay there in the snow, in the dark, wind slicing through my clothes, and for the first time in months, maybe years, I felt something close to hopelessness. I wanted to scream at my parents for abandoning me, at Amelia for taking everything, at the universe for pretending this was some kind of character-building story. I didn't scream. I stood up, and I walked back to the dorm. The spring semester came with a shift. I got better at managing my schedule. My lab shifts were now twice a week instead of 5 times. The research position gave me access to a faculty lounge where people left bagels and bananas after meetings. I ate more regularly. I didn't look healthy, but I looked less like I was dying. I started to speak up in class. At first, shakily, then more firmly. I used words I didn't know a year ago: intertextuality, meta-narrative, intersectional critique. Dr. Klein no longer skipped over me. She started asking for my input first. One day in April, I received a letter. A real, physical envelope, not an email. It was from the Office of Student Development. I opened it slowly, expecting a survey. Instead, it read, "Congratulations. You've been nominated to join the Marlton Scholars Program for your academic excellence and demonstrated leadership. Please attend the recognition luncheon on May 3rd. I stared at the letter for a long time. Then I folded it neatly, placed it in a folder, and hid it in my drawer. I didn't tell my parents. I didn't tell anyone. It was mine. All mine. That summer, I stayed on campus. I couldn't afford to fly home. Not that they asked. I took a position cataloging books in the university archive and a second job as an evening janitor in the dorms. Amelia posted photos from Santorini. I posted nothing. But I was changing, and I knew it. I didn't feel it all at once. It was subtle, like the first hint of spring air after months of snow. A change in the way professors greeted me. The quiet way classmates started looking at me when someone posed a difficult question. A shift in posture, tone, attention. I was becoming visible. And not just as the girl who always submitted her work early. Not just the tired study student who kept granola bars in her coat pocket and survived on vending machine tea. I was slowly, finally being seen as someone worth listening to. Someone worth respecting. I didn't know it yet, but the world had started watching. It began with a research paper. Dr. Maris, the professor who supervised my assistantship, had asked me to help sort citations and digitize old theses from the university archive. The work was dusty and tedious, but I found it strangely comforting. I loved the smell of the brittle pages, the sound of my fingers on a keyboard in an otherwise silent room. One afternoon, I found a 1979 thesis on feminist narrative gaps in 20th century war literature. I was so fascinated by the premise I stayed late and read it cover to cover. The next morning, I walked into Dr. Maris's office, clutching my notes. "I think there's something missing here," I said carefully. She looked up. "In the thesis?" "No," I said. "In the broader scholarship. No one talks about how grief manifests differently in women-centered narratives of war trauma. Everyone just focuses on loss as a universal experience. But it's not." She blinked at me, then slowly smiled. 3 months later, I was presenting a paper based on my research at a regional undergraduate humanities symposium. I wore a second-hand blazer from the donation bin and borrowed flats from Hannah. My hair was tied in a bun so no one would see how long it had been since my last real haircut. I stood behind the podium, heart hammering, hands damp. But when I spoke, the room fell quiet. People leaned forward. They took notes. When I finished, a professor from another university stood and said, "That's the most original undergraduate work I've seen in 5 years." The applause startled me. Not because I didn't want it, but because I'd stopped expecting it. That conference led to other things. An invitation to submit my paper to a student journal, a summer research fellowship, an email from a professor at Columbia asking if I would consider applying to their graduate program. The girl who had fainted in the stairwell was gone. In her place was someone new. Still tired, still underfed, but sharp, determined, and finally, visible. My 3rd year at Marlton passed in a blur of deadlines, project meetings, and peer panels. I mentored first-year students and led a seminar on structural narrative. My name appeared on 2 collaborative publications. My schedule was packed. My voice was steady. My circle, small but loyal. I still worked. Still rationed. Still knew which vending machines didn't jam. But I also knew something else. I was building a life. One that had nothing to do with my family's approval. And everything to do with earning my place in a world that once overlooked me. Meanwhile, Amelia's world began shifting. Not collapsing. Not completely. But the shine started to wear off. She switched majors again, from communications to hospitality management. Her Paris trip was canceled due to personal issues. She posted fewer photos. Mom told me on one of our rare phone calls, "Amelia's just going through a phase. We're a little worried. She's not doing great in school, but we don't want to pressure her." I said nothing. They didn't ask how I was, so I didn't offer. That winter, something happened I never saw coming. The university announced its annual nominee for the National Undergraduate Research Medal. It was a big deal. Only 1 student per campus could be selected. I didn't even know I'd been nominated. When the email landed in my inbox, I read it 3 times before it sank in. My name, my paper, my university. I was the nominee. The application required letters of recommendation, a personal statement, and a presentation sample. I stayed up for 3 nights straight assembling it all. 2 weeks later, I received another email. I was a finalist. I called Hannah first. She screamed loud enough to wake up her entire dorm. I didn't call my parents. Not because I forgot. Because I remembered how they'd chosen not to show up again and again. How they'd saved every cent and scrap of energy for Amelia. How they'd once told me I was stronger so I didn't need as much. I didn't need them now either. But fate, or maybe irony, has a wicked sense of humor. In March, I received another email. The university had selected me to deliver the graduation address. The valedictory. I'd already been notified I would graduate summa cum laude. But this was different. This was public, symbolic, unignorable. Me, the invisible daughter, the forgotten scholarship kid, the one who walked herself to the bus terminal and moved into college alone. Now, I'd be standing on the stage, center of the arena, voice echoing off the walls. It didn't feel real. I printed the email and taped it above my desk. Then I sat down to write the speech. I agonized over every word. This wasn't just an address. It was a reckoning. But I didn't want revenge through rage. That would make me small. I wanted truth. Truth wrapped in poise, dignity, strength. So I wrote about resilience, about failure, about building something in the shadow of everything that tried to bury you. I didn't name names, but I didn't have to. The people who'd failed me would hear themselves in every line, and the people who'd helped me along the way would hear themselves too. Weeks passed. I bought a dress from a clearance rack for $12 and had Hannah iron it the night before the ceremony. I borrowed heels 2 sizes too big from a girl on my floor. My cap sat awkwardly on my head, but I wore it with pride. The arena was packed. I peeked out from backstage and saw rows of families. Signs, balloons, cheers. Then I saw them. My parents. Front row, reserved seats. They came. I had no idea how they got the invitation. Likely an automated email sent to all parents of graduating seniors. But they were here. And beside them, Amelia, in a sundress and sunglasses, looking bored. When my name was announced, I stepped onto the stage. The lights were hot. My palms were sweating. I took a deep breath. Then I spoke. I talked about being unseen, about what it means to fight for a future no one else believes in. I talked about the power of building something alone, brick by brick, when the world offers you no blueprint, no guidance, and no applause. I thanked my professors, my mentors, my friends. I said nothing of my family. And when I finished, the room erupted. A standing ovation. I saw Dr. Maris wiping a tear. I saw Hannah clapping like her life depended on it. And I saw my parents. Frozen. Staring. Amelia was looking down at her phone. After the ceremony, there was a reception. Faculty shook my hand. Strangers asked for photos. A representative from the National Research Board pulled me aside and said, "We'll be reaching out very soon. Your application blew us away." I smiled politely. Then I felt a tap on my shoulder. It was my mother. Her voice was tight, her eyes wide. "You never told us you were giving the speech." I raised an eyebrow. "You never asked." My father stepped forward, cleared his throat. "That was impressive. Thanks." Amelia didn't speak. She looked at the buffet table and said, "Is this real shrimp or imitation?" They hovered awkwardly, waiting for me to say something, to invite them to dinner, to hug, to thank them for showing up. I didn't. I excused myself and walked away. There were other people waiting to speak to me, other people who'd shown up when it counted. That night, I sat in my tiny apartment with a paper plate of leftover cake and a bottle of off-brand soda. Hannah was with me. We played music from my cracked phone and danced around the room. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt complete, like I had nothing left to prove. Because I didn't. The Monday after graduation, I received the official letter. I had won. The National Undergraduate Research Medal, an honor given to one student across all U.S. universities each year for outstanding academic work and contribution to their field. It came with a $10,000 grant, an invitation to present at a national conference, and a line that would change the course of my resume forever. I read the letter in silence, then folded it in half and slid it under my notebook. It wasn't that I wasn't proud. I just didn't feel like celebrating. Not yet. By Tuesday, my inbox was flooded. Professors from schools I'd only dreamed about wrote to congratulate me. Graduate departments invited me to interview. Even a mid-sized online magazine wrote a short profile, From Janitor to Scholar, how one student rewrote her story. They used my graduation photo, me in that $12 dress, holding the school seal, half smiling under an overexposed sun. I didn't share the article, but someone else did. My phone buzzed the next morning. Mom. That alone was a shock. She rarely texted. Saw this. Wow, can we talk sometime this week? I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I locked the phone and put it face down. By the end of the week, I'd received 2 more messages. One from Dad. We're proud of you. We didn't realize everything you've been doing. It's really amazing. Can we take you to dinner? Just us. And one from Amelia. Saw your interview. Cool stuff. Didn't know you were doing all that. Thought maybe you dropped out. LOL. LOL. There it was. Even now, even after all this, dismissal disguised as casual acknowledgement. Amelia's version of praise had always been condescending silence. I didn't expect more. And yet, I still felt the sting. I didn't reply. Then came the voicemail. Mom's voice measured a little too high. Hi, honey. I guess we're all a little stunned. I mean, we knew you were doing well, but not this well. You've always been independent, and we thought you didn't want help. Maybe we misread things. Anyway, your father and I would love to sit down with you. Maybe even with Amelia. Just to talk, reconnect. No pressure. We're proud of you. Really. I listened to it twice. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I felt detached, like I was watching someone else's story. Later that night, Hannah asked gently, Are you going to call them back? I shrugged. Eventually. You don't have to. I know. What would you even say? That took longer to answer. Because the truth was, I didn't know anymore. For so long, I'd told myself that this moment would be triumphant. That when they finally came around, I'd get to throw every word they'd ever said back in their faces. But now, with everything in my hands, recognition, offers, future, those emotions felt hollow. I didn't want revenge. I wanted peace. A week later, I agreed to meet them. We chose a small cafe halfway between campus and their suburb. I wore jeans and a black sweater, tied my hair back, brought no papers, no photos, no proof of who I had become. Just me. When I arrived, they were already seated. Amelia wasn't there. They stood awkwardly when I walked in. Mom opened with, You look healthy. It was almost funny. Dad added, We read everything. The paper. The interviews. You really did all that. I nodded. We sat down. There was a long silence. Then Mom reached across the table. We want to say sorry. I raised an eyebrow. She continued. We didn't know. We didn't see what you were going through. And we should have. We should have asked more, been more present. We thought you were the strong one, and I guess we leaned on that. I took a breath. Not angry. Not warm, just honest. You didn't lean. You left. Dad looked down. Mom swallowed hard. You're right. We talked for nearly an hour. Mostly surface things. They told me about Dad's retirement plans, Mom's new volunteer gig at the local hospital, Amelia's current, uncertain academic direction. They didn't say she'd dropped out, but it was implied. I nodded when they spoke. Smiled when it felt polite. Laughed once at a story about a cat they'd adopted. But I didn't say much about me. Because this conversation wasn't about my future. It was about their guilt. And I didn't owe them my healing. When the check came, Dad reached for it. I let him. Outside the cafe, Mom hugged me. She held on longer than I expected. Then whispered, We really are proud of you. I didn't reply. Just stepped back. Said goodbye. And walked away. 2 weeks later, I boarded a train to the East Coast. I'd accepted a research position at a major university full fellowship, housing stipend, and a seat at their annual international symposium. My new apartment was small but clean. The windows faced a row of brick bookstores and coffee shops. On weekends, I took walks and let the wind hit my face like a baptism. I kept my medals in a drawer. I didn't need them on display. I knew who I was. One afternoon, I received an email from the school's development office. They wanted to interview me for a spotlight video for incoming students. The theme was resilience. At first, I hesitated. Then I agreed. But I had conditions: no mention of my family, no sob story, no weepy music or slow zoom-ins on my face. I told them I wanted the video to say one thing: you don't need permission to be extraordinary. They agreed. The video went viral within the university's network. Other schools picked it up. Eventually, it made its way to one of those motivational TikTok accounts. Then came the comment sections. This gave me chills. I needed to hear this today. Her voice sounds like peace and fire at the same time. One user simply wrote, "I'm the sibling who didn't get the tuition. Thank you for speaking for me." That one stayed with me the longest. I never heard from Amelia again. Not after graduation. Not after the article. Not after the video. I think, deep down, she never really saw me as a sister. Only a comparison. And when the comparison started winning, she chose to disappear. I let her. Sometimes I still think about that day in the airport 4 years ago. Dragging my suitcases alone. No one saying goodbye. No one even looking back. I think about how small I felt. How lost. And how determined. And I think, if I could go back and whisper something to that girl, I wouldn't say, "It gets better." I'd say, "They didn't see you because they couldn't imagine who you'd become. But one day, you'll become someone they'll never forget." The first time I stood at a podium with a national audience, I wore the same $12 dress from graduation. Not out of symbolism. Just because it still fit. A reporter asked me afterward, "What drives you?" I smiled, then answered, "Sometimes silence. Sometimes hunger. But mostly knowing the people who overlooked me will have to live with that."